And the whole idea of it is to give greater definition to your models so they can pick out all the details. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies, and I'm going to go through a very short tutorial about dry brushing. So dry brushing is used in conjunction with washes, and the whole idea of it is to give greater definition to your models so they can pick out all the details. Okay, so here I have on my workbench, I've got a couple of sample things that I'm going to dry brush for you. So I've selected items that have got quite a bit of detail that, as you can see, as it's in the basic metallic black there, it's very difficult to see any of the details here. Now, one of the aspects of miniature modeling is everything, as it is in the title, miniature, which means the light source that you're going to be getting on things is very diffused. Being diffuse lighting, it means that it's harder to get all the reflections of the detail. So you might see as I'm moving this around, you might pick up a few little reflections and you see that this isn't totally flat as it may appear. Now, what we're going to do with the washes and then also with dry brushing is it's going to enhance it. It's going to make it much more three-dimensional because you're enhancing the shadow effect and then also the highlights, and that's what the dry brushing is going to do. Now, I'm not going to be demonstrating washes on these because they're so dark. Usually you'll use a darker color to act as the shadows. Seeing that this is black, this is already the 100% shadow point. Now, I've chosen these because it's easier to see with dry brushing how it affects the piece. But if you can imagine if this was a grey piece, you put in a black wash, you'll see the wash will collect in all the crevices, they'll give you your shadows, and then the dry brushing across the top is going to give you all the highlights. So you're going to have that three-dimensionality or three levels of effect there. All right, so what else I've got here? I've got my wet palette. So wet palettes here to keep my water-based paints moist. I've got the Scale 75 Artist range here, which is quite a thick paint. So I'll apply it here and we'll be able to mix it down to whatever consistency we want. I've got the alcohol-based Tamiya silver here. Now, generally use silver for dry brushing because silver has aluminium flakes in it. So that's how you get your silver pigment. Now, the idea of that is being metallic, it actually is very, very opaque. So once you add just a little bit, it'll work as a highlight immediately. It won't have any of this transparency type effect. If, say, for instance, you use white, which needs a little bit more technique to do so. Okay, so this particular technique is going to be perfect for anything that looks like a machine, metallic parts, engine parts, say guns. So, for instance, with gun barrels, quite often you'll paint them black first, and then you dry brush them with either silver or a dark silver. So that's why I've got these two here. This is to be mixed between the two, and you can change your metallic and highlight depth. Okay, so let's get our paints ready. Oh, before I go on, I've got some paint brushes here, of course, and then I've got my God Hand brush care sheet. So that's a special fiber, so it's a lot safer on your brushes. You can just use a regular towel as well, but you'll get less control. That's the only thing. All right, so let's open this up. All right, so I've got my dollop of black there. Let's get a little bit of silver. Mix this up a bit. All right. All right, so there's the silver there. Right, let's put those back. All right, so I'm just going to wipe off the excess of this silver. And clean the brush off a bit. Just got some water here off camera. Okay, so we've got our paints here. Now I've got the silver applied in this point here. Now, the important part about dry brushing is exactly that. The brush needs to be dry. If it's too wet, you'll just be brushing over everything like normal. And to get it dry, basically you're doing what I did before. We're wiping off all the excess. And because the silver is a very opaque paint, so even though you can't see any coming off on the tissue now, as I brush it across its surface, let's just get it up closer here. You're going to see it right away. Now the technique is basically you want to draw it across the surface. So you want to, like if it's like this, you want a horizontal motion so that it doesn't actually get into the lower crevices, okay? And you're going to do it just touching and just across like this. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll apply it onto half of it so it's easier to see. Let's see if you can see that. Maybe not. All right, let's just draw it across here. I'll do the tip. All right, so it's basically just dragging it across the surface. Okay, now with the fan blades, I'll be rubbing against this way here. All right, a very light texture. I should say, not texture. Tension. And this is just picking up the paint on those very top points of the detail. And now I'll do the edges here. Always halfway's up to here. Okay, so let's see if you can notice there the half that I've done. So basically it's this half that I've done. This half is still the same. And you see how, let's see if we can get that focused in, you'll be able to notice that it picks up the highlights quite a lot more than the side that hasn't been done yet. Now this is particularly noticeable when it's in shade. So we've got direct light on this at the moment. Now if it's in shade, I don't know if I can show you that. You should be able to see. It also looks like it's picking up light simply because the aluminium there is being highlighted. Okay, let's see if I can do this inside part so that'll make it more noticeable as well. Now getting the feel of dry brushing takes practice. So don't be worried if the first time you do it doesn't look quite right, because it is easy to overdo it. But if you apply it slowly, so if you rub off most of this pigment beforehand, you'll be able to control it by adding extra if you need it. So at the moment I'm just adding a little bit more, a little bit in the center there. Okay, let's see. We can get this close. Okay, so that's this half that's been done across here. And this half is still natural. Okay, so that's basically dry brushing with straight silver. Now, to my eye, that's probably a little bit too contrasty for me. And you can cut that down. And all you simply do is you mix some black with the silver, giving you a gunmetal mix. Now you can control that to whatever shade you like. I'll probably get a little bit more silver in there. And when you do this gunmetal mix, something like this on a black base works absolutely perfectly for gun barrels. Okay, so let's do this one here, I guess. All right, so I've got a different piece here. And we'll do the same technique, okay? So we're gently brushing across. So what this is going to do is basically it's doing the same thing as highlighting all those high upper areas. It's just going to be much more subdued because of the darker tone. And again, I'll try and do half so you can tell the differences. Okay, just trying to get those fan blades on the inside here. Across here, some of the edges. Some of this raised detail. Okay. So let's see if you can see that. Now I can see it from my naked eye. So this is the half that I've done. So you'll be able to see this edge here, a little bit of the fan blades, the tip. The tip will be the most noticeable part. And then you've got these little dials across here and here. Now if I hold this other one up here. All right, and that's the one that's done with pure silver. So the contrast is much higher. It's much more noticeable. So from there, you can adjust the dry brushing tone to whatever you like. Dry brushing works with any contrasting color. So if this was white, you could dry brush with black. I mean, that would be very extreme, but the general purpose is to do highlights because you're picking up all the high edges. So generally you start with a dark color and then use a lighter color for dry brushing. So for instance, if you're doing, say, a sand camouflage on a tank and it's mainly in a dark yellow and you want to highlight the edges, then you'll either lighten that basic color with a white or use a lighter yellow and then dry brush across all the edges. So that's it. This is my basic tutorial on how to dry brush. Okay, this is the simplest method of having a dark background and just using silver. And the reason for using silver is because of the aluminium pigment in it. It makes it very easy to go over the top without having much paint material on your brush. So your brush is going to be very, very dry, but it'll still be able to impart all this detail. It gives you a lot more control too. So experiment with some different colors. This is perhaps the easiest way of doing your dry brush highlights with a silver. So I've got my silver, I've got a black, and then in between I've mixed up some gunmetal to make it a bit more subtle. Okay, so that's a subtle effect. And this is a straight silver effect. Okay, so thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. So if you have any questions, please make sure you add them to the questions on the bottom of the screen, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something about dry brushing.